Hello, everyone, and welcome to this lacrosse mayoral debate for 2021. I hope everyone is doing well and staying safe. And as many people know, we have a rich tradition at UW La Crosse of having candidate debates over the years. And certainly this is one of the most exciting that I've been a part of, because we've got two outstanding candidates for mayor of La Crosse. And I personally have collaborated and communicated with them on numerous occasions over the years. And so it's a pretty tough choice. I don't think we can go wrong either way, but there can only be one mayor. And so tonight's event is very, very important in learning where these candidates stand on key issues. Now, the people who set this up are the Joint Committee on Free Speech Promotion at UW La Crosse, and they've done a fantastic job. And this is just one of several events that they arrange throughout the year. And I am very delighted to hand things over to the chair of that committee, Nita Dutta.
Thanks so much, Joe. Welcome all. I will just thank quickly the committee members who have done a wonderful job on organizing and planning all the logistics and making sure the event works, without any hiccups, and have figured out all the logistics. So I want to thank Ben Confort, Heather Dutcher, Cara Ostland, William Schuberger, William Staub, Kim Schlevy, and Jared Zwettler very much for helping out with everything and doing a wonderful job of setting up this event. I will pass it on now to Jared, who is going to give you the introduction about the event. Thank you.
Sorry, can you all see me? There we go. Sorry about that. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the mayoral debate hosted by the Joint Committee on Free Speech Promotion. My name is Jared Zwettler, and I'm one of the student representatives on this committee. We're very excited to welcome all of our mayoral candidates, well, both of our mayoral candidates, excuse me, Mitch Reynolds and Vicky Markussen. The format of the debate goes as follows. Each candidate will have a 1-minute introduction. Then they will be given the opportunity to answer questions collected directly from the student body. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each question. And then after we have finished up all of the questions we have here, we'll allow 1 minute for closing statements per candidate. One last thing here. Sorry, I lost my place. If you have any questions during the debate, you can submit them via the QR code or the text link on screen. And with that, I'll hand this over to our moderator for the evening, Dr. Anthony Tergoski of our Political Science Department.
Well, thank you so much, Jared, and thank you to the candidates for being here, and thank you to everyone, your great efforts for organizing this debate. And for me, it's a special pleasure to be moderating this debate, because this is really all about the audience, as Jared said, and it's all about the students and the UWL family. So I'm really looking forward to tonight, and I'm looking forward to hearing from the candidates about the very important issues related to the city of La Crosse and UWL. But that being said, I'm thrilled to pass it on to Vicky Markussen. If Vicky could give a 1-minute opening statement. Vicky, I would like if you could introduce yourself to the UWL students and the UWL community.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. I am proud to say that my niece graduated amongst your midst. She technically graduated last May. So I've had the pleasure recently of experiencing it as a quasi-parent. So thanks for having me. My background. I grew up in Milwaukee, kind of spent a few years of grade school in Salem, Oregon, moved back to Milwaukee. I had parents that became parents at the age of 17. So it's needless to say, we grew up pretty poor where I grew up, and it was a full ride to UW-Madison that absolutely changed my life. I used that journalism degree, came here to La Crosse thinking this was going to be a quick stop, and ended up meeting the man who is my husband. So been raising my 3 children here, left journalism when I got married, and have been working for several nonprofits with builders, with collaborative entity that spans borders to work on greater good and collaborative projects, Chamber of Commerce, and started my own business. And I am running as a nonpartisan candidate because I wanted to stay true to my values. Decided to do the unusual thing of not seeking endorsements because I looked at my supporters and said, I want to support the diversity that is among them. And so I am proud to be a mayoral candidate for the city of La Crosse.
Thank you so much, Vicky. Mitch, over to you. If you could introduce yourself to the UWL students and the UWL community.
Well, sure. And thanks so much, Anthony. And thanks to UWL and Joe and Navamita and Jared and of course, my opponent, Vicki Markussen, for being here. I've been in La Crosse for about 26 years. I came here as a non-traditional student, a 1998 graduate of UWL. Raised a family here through some pretty rough times and some really good ones as well. Spent many years working in restaurants and bars, and then 16 years as a journalist, and the last couple of years as an operations manager for a sustainable manufacturer here locally. I earned an MBA at Viterbo. I'm looking to serve those who are the most vulnerable and marginalized in our community. I'm looking to serve to address issues of social, racial, economic, and environmental justice. I'm glad to be here, and I am certainly happy to have the chance to serve as the next mayor of the city of La Crosse.
Thank you so much, Mitch. Our first question from our audience, I think, is a really important question. And I'll start with Vicky for this one. Vicky, obviously, it's really important for the campus and the city of La Crosse to have a good relationship. What would you do to kind of build that bridge between UWL and the city government of La Crosse?
I really see there being lots of intertwining of the city and campus. It is everything from you are our workforce. So the students, obviously, they need to pay bills, pay tuition, pay rent. So it's that initial jobs. As in all of my positions, I've always had interns. I believe in internships thoroughly. They add as much vibrancy to the businesses that they work for as they learn in return. So I'm a big believer in internships. I have and would love to continue serving on the Chancellor's Advisory Board when he gathers the community together. It's a great connection point of what's happening, not just on campus, but throughout the university. And I truly believe in being that bridge to keeping the students, to keeping many of you in this area. You are our future, you're our current, and making sure that we can do all that we can to keep you here in La Crosse is a tremendous goal of mine.
Thank you so much, Vicky. Mitch, over to you. How would you bridge the campus and the city government?
Well, this is not dissimilar from a question we actually just got maybe yesterday or the day before from UWL students as well. And I will say that I think it's very important for the city to proactively reach out to our student populations, our college student populations, especially when there are issues that impact them. I think that it's very important for us to have an ongoing dialogue with, we do typically have a student representative on the city council, and this for typically the area around UWL right now is Justice Weaver. And I think it's really important to have those open dialogues between that city council member and, the Student Government Association. I also think that I would love to hear more from students in City Hall. What are the issues that are important to you? How can we address issues like renters' rights and the things that really impact the tremendous number of students who live in our community? I want to hear more, and most importantly, I'd like you to go vote on April 6th.
Well, I think we can all agree on that. And Mitch, I've been so impressed with the interest that the UWL students have expressed in this election. So that's been super exciting for me to hear. I want to move on to another question. I can start with Vicky again, then go to Mitch. Vicky, what are some steps that you might take to improve the quality of life for college students who live in our La Crosse community?
I know that the students' housing is a big concern. I've heard it from, friends of my son go to school at UWL. And so I've heard that it's if you don't find a place to live within the first 2 months for the following year, your options start to dwindle. So obviously we need to address the student housing and the quality of the housing. It was interesting because I did speak to the student senate and asked the question about cars and everyone who is visible, because in this day and age, not everyone turns their camera on. I said, how many of you have cars on campus? And every single one visible raise their hand. So obviously parking, I know, is a topic, getting you to jobs, getting you home when you want to go home. But we also need to bridge the gap of getting you internships. Those are resume builders. If you want to be able to move on into great positions, we need to form those partnerships with our community to ensure that we're building your resume as well.
Thank you so much, Vicki. Mitch, over to you. What would you do to enhance the quality of life for our college students in the community?
Well, when I talked to Justice Weaver about this, these very things, the thing that he brought up was for quality of life was simply the quality of housing and dealing with some landlords that aren't always easy to deal with. Let's just say that there's some frustration out there with the amount of money that's being paid and the quality of housing that people are living in. I've recommended having a position or a person or a committee or something to be able to reach out and proactively engage not only the student population, but other populations in our city to make sure that they're aware of their rights as renters, so that when they have conflicts, because sometimes conflicts occur, but when they have conflicts with their landlords, they know that there's a resource there in City Hall and people that can provide them information so that they know what their rights are. I mean, we know that our renters do have rights, and sometimes we just need to make sure that City Hall is being more proactive to let people know what they are.
Mitch, if I could follow up with you on that, do you think that the city of La Crosse has a problem with predatory landlords, slumlords? Is that something that is a significant problem in your view?
Well, Anthony, when I was a renter, I actually never had that problem. I was always fortunate enough to live in rentals that wasn't a problem. And I think the vast majority of landlords in our city are fantastic property owners. But, I have certainly heard the stories from people that struggle. And with their landlords, they feel like they're living in situations where there's not appropriate plumbing, that's dangerous electricity, and they're paying extraordinary amounts of money to live there. So yeah, I would say, yeah, Anthony, I do believe there's a problem.
What about you, Vicki? Do you think that the city of La Crosse has a problem with predatory landlords and slumlords?
I think that there are definitely some that there are concerns with. I will say, one of the challenges, and this is not a defense at all, but having talked to developers, one of the challenges is you buy homes and you try to accumulate enough property that you can build a larger building. And the challenge becomes you have some tired homes that students continue to live in until you can assemble enough of those parcels. So honestly, what we need to be working on as a city is how do we get these tired homes demolished quicker so that we can build up these higher quality apartments that many of these individuals are looking for. So many of us know the areas that feel tired is the best way to put it. And being able to speed up turning those into higher quality is really what I would like to see the city working on.
Thanks very much, Vicki. I want to come to Mitch with this next question. Mitch, something that's on my mind a lot, and this has come up in conversations with colleagues, is that we really have talented students here. We have fantastic students, and we really want to keep them here after they graduate for the sake of our community and for the sake of our economy. As mayor, or just in general, what do you think can be done to make sure that our just fantastic students stick around in La Crosse after they graduate?
One of the key aspects is quality of life, Anthony. I mean, there's no question that people, especially young college graduates. So when I graduated from college, I had children already, so I wasn't exactly didn't fall in that demographic. But a lot of young college graduates want to go someplace where there's quality of life. They move to someplace where there's quality of life. They find a job when they're there. They don't necessarily chase a job. And I think that the key thing that we need to work on to make certain that we're capturing college graduates and anybody else who's young or not young, skilled and talented and educated to come to the city of La Crosse is to focus on the quality of the quality of life in our communities. And that means, making sure that we're celebrating our culture, and that we're embracing diversity, and we're empowering voices, and we're really focusing on building up the quality and affordability of housing in our community so we can house young professionals that are not at the top of the pay scale. I mean, that's certainly a really good start, not to mention, celebrating our natural resources where we can all recreate.
Thanks so much, Mitch. Vicky, over to you. How do we keep those fantastic UWL students around after they graduate?
Well, this was one of my projects at the Chamber of Commerce, was how do we keep them? What I have found time and time again is the students just don't understand the opportunity. So when you're a student, you're focused on paying your bills and school. And the more we can integrate the students with our businesses, that's where opportunity happens. There's an example of tours that were given in another community, that when students went around and toured some of the businesses, they started to realize, wow, we do have some pretty unique businesses here that would be great to work for. Things that are on cause, if you will, like used to be dynamic recycling, and how they retool products and put them back into the recycle chain. There are some really interesting companies. Again, if we can connect students to what the opportunities are, I think we have a great chance of keeping them.
Thank you so much, Vicky. Vicky, I'll come to you with this next question coming in from our audience. Every year, Oktoberfest brings multiple people to our community, which might be a bit of an understatement. Associated with this event is a lot of underage alcohol consumption, as well as individuals who consume too much alcohol. What initiatives do you have planned to ensure our community is safe while honoring the tradition of this event?
Yeah, that's a tough one, right? Because this is an event that we're known for. It is. And even, I think this is the example. Even when we didn't have Oktoberfest last year, we still had Oktoberfest, right? So there were still a lot of people that came here for the tradition. It is a challenge. Anybody who's been downtown at Oktoberfest weekend at 4 p.m. sees that indulgence is a concern. And honestly, I believe that our police have a very good presence of Oktoberfest. There could be a lot of instances. Their goal is really to just keep people safe to the best of their abilities. It is a challenge. It fills our hotel rooms. We cannot ignore that there are many that observe Oktoberfest in safe ways. The parades are fun. It is a tradition for us. But if we can be thinking about how we provide sober options for those that choose not to be around that, I think that we start to become healthier as a community.
Thank you, Vicky. Mitch, over to you.
It is, Oktoberfest is a wonderful cultural event. There's no question. And it's fantastic. Certainly the impact that it has on financial impact that it has in our bars and restaurants is unequal. It's tremendous. And, speaking with the Oktoberfest board, talking about how, we oftentimes conflate the Oktoberfest with extraordinary amounts of binge drinking. And it's not necessarily the case. I mean, there certainly is excessive amounts of drinking that happens, and excessive amounts of drinking or activities that are impacted by drinking that occur in certain spots around the city. Those are the types of things that we need to address on a regular basis. I think over the last 20 years, we've really accelerated not only enforcement of our rules, certainly, but also doing some education so that people are aware of the dangers of binge drinking. I'd like to just continue that and make sure that we're advocating for a reasonable and sober Oktoberfest.
Thank you so much, Mitch. I've got another question coming in from our audience. I'll start with Mitch for this one. Certainly at UWL and in my department in particular, political science, we work extremely hard to get our students engaged in government and public service. And so that's certainly a priority of us. And I'm wondering what could be done on the city's end to get students more involved in government and public service. What could be done on the city's end to increase civic engagement, especially among the college student population? Mitch, what are some of your thoughts on that?
I think, I would like to see, and I don't know if this would exactly increase civic engagement, but it certainly increase, I think, potentially involvement, at least in the voting process, to make sure that we have absentee voter drop boxes on campus. I think that would be a quick and easy way to ensure that we have at least accessibility for balloting. In relation to increasing engagement, I think that, I talked about earlier about proactively reaching out to student government. When there are issues that are in front of the city council that will significantly impact the student population, reaching out to student government and using their voices to engage in the student population, I think is pretty key. I think we could do a number of different things with social media that we're not doing right now. I mean, we have one department that really uses the heck out of social media, and that's our police department. I think we could do way better than that. And I think that's a key way to get the student population engaged. And I would explore ways to do that.
Thank you, Mitch. Vicky, what about you? Some ways that the city could go about boosting student civic engagement and getting students more involved in government and public service?
I'm going to start with that last part first, which is people care about what they feel impacts them, right? So students getting involved in what is happening with the student government themselves, that's the start. So it begins, honestly, within the campus itself. How do you get students engaged in what the campus is working on? And then explaining how that intertwines with the city, right? So a lot of students understand housing, but don't understand their housing needs, but don't understand property taxes play a component in that. It's the number one expense in rent is what's happening with property taxes. But there are amazing ways that students are engaging in our community and in sparking that passion that a lot of students have, particularly around sustainability, making sure that they're finding ways to volunteer and engaging them again in ways that make them feel they're making a difference and that they have a voice is really important. And so coming to the university to seek that feedback on some of those topics would be one of my top priorities.
Vicky, I want to pick up on something that you just mentioned. I've noticed that our students have quite a passion for sustainability, that is a major passion that is around our campus. And I'm wondering, Vicky, what you might do to sort of leverage that passion for sustainability that we see in our campus community and what you might do for sustainability more generally.
Yeah, I want to point out something funny that happened. So when I did speak to the student government and I talked about the hand raising for parking, about 2 questions later, it was about, they asked a question about sustainability and the student themselves said, okay, look at the irony here. We're talking about how do we reduce our carbon footprint and all of us have cars on campus, right? So some of it is obviously taking that passion that the students have, harnessing it within the campus and how do some intriguing sustainability pieces happen. But where I'm interested in engaging the students is there's a company that I talked to this morning that's very interested in starting a program at the university that talks about how do we reduce carbon footprint? How do we use some of the students and professors here on campus so that we can become a world-class leader in sustainability? And they have some ideas of how that happens. That's what sparks passion. The next generation who's forming solutions for the rest of us, that's intriguing in a way that is encapsulated within our universities that in and of itself is exciting as well.
Thank you, Vicky. Mitch, over to you.
I think that there's a tremendous number of ways where we can understand how sustainability is self-serving. I mean, that's the tremendous part about sustainability is that not only do we look at sustainability as a method so that we can help and heal our community, heal our planet, and then combat global climate change. But we also need to look at sustainability as how it can actually help ourselves. And I think that one of the key aspects of doing that when we talk about transportation is, making certain that we're exploring as many mass transit opportunities as possible. Can we expand that to better serve students that, for instance, they don't have to have cars on campus? Now, I know that a lot of people still want to have their cars around, there's no question, but can we do it such that they're using them less once they get here? I think that's a real possibility. I think that also, using the strength of advocacy of the students to really get messages out in the community about issues that foster greater sustainability and a greater pursuit of renewable energy usage throughout the city. I think those are, there's a couple different ways, but there's certainly, like you said, there's a lot of energy there, a lot of enthusiasm, and it's certainly a wonderful and great need for students to see the rest of us really step up our game and pursue models of sustainability that make sense.
Thanks so much, Mitch. I'm going to go to another question from our audience, and I can start with you, Mitch, for this one. The question is, you both have talked about off-campus housing quite a bit. We also have a lot of students who find it difficult to find food and clothing. I recognize that there are many La Crosse community members who have these same struggles. What initiatives do you have to address access to these necessities, both on and off campus?
Well, I'm a little unclear whether we're talking about access in terms of proximity or access in terms of being able to acquire things financially. But let me talk about financially. I think that one of the key aspects that we need to address is, we've talked about off-campus housing, and one of those key issues is the amount of rent that students pay. I mean, that's an enormous bill that students have to pay, that renters all throughout the city have to pay. And that severely impacts what they're able to do in relation to buying groceries and buying clothing and taking care of their basic needs. The aspects, the key issues of affordability and quality in housing impacts our community at large, including our students. And I think if we can address that, we can address being able to acquire food and clothing. We can also address issues of food deserts as well. I think that that's certainly something that I've talked about, and I'd like to see some of those issues rectified.
Thank you, Mitch. Over to you, Vicky. The issue of students who have difficulty acquiring sort of the basic necessities of life.
Yeah, it certainly is a concern, and we do have nonprofits. There are nonprofits that work on professional clothing for those that are going for job interviews. There are nonprofits that do have food pantries, and making sure that the students have connections to those food pantries. And I think it's a conversation to have with those nonprofits to say there is this need out there we cannot forget. A lot of times they're being serviced at elementary schools. How do we start to provide those services and being really focused at bringing those onto our university campuses? To me, that's a great conversation to have with career services. I've had those conversations with career services in different areas, different conversations as well, but identifying the needs of students and how our community can support them. I think it's just a matter of having a conversation because we have a tremendously generous community that will respond.
And thank you so much, Vicky. I've got another audience question, and Vicky, I can come to you with this one. Now that more of the population within our community is being vaccinated, I recognize that individuals may feel comfortable with removing masks. What plans do you have to ensure we are keeping our community safe, both on and off campus, knowing that not everyone will receive a vaccine?
Yes, that's a challenge. The challenge becomes when people are out and about, they may be having a beverage, they may be eating. It's this awkward, you take your masks off to do that, right? So the recommendations, as everyone is being told, even though you are vaccinated, you should be wearing your masks. It's challenging because the police have said they can't write tickets. There's no ticket for not wearing a mask. And so the burden is placed on the people that are willing to speak up. The businesses oftentimes are telling people to put their masks on as well. It's a challenge. It has always been a challenge in our community. We're not used to it. But in terms of enforcement, that is a challenge when our police officers can't write tickets. It just becomes a person-to-person and awkward conversation, unfortunately.
Thank you, Vicky. Mitch, over to you on keeping our on-campus and off-campus community safe in this particular context.
Well, the very first question that I got as a mayoral candidate came from an 8-year-old who asked me the same thing. How can you get people to wear their masks? And this is back in December, I think. Yeah, it was in December. And I was standing, we're all in masks. I'm standing outside the doorway and I'm talking to this family. And I got to ask the question, how can you get people to wear masks? And at the time, I know what he was thinking. And he was very concerned about getting back to school. He wanted to get back into the classroom. At this point, they weren't in the classrooms. And it was such a touching moment. And my answer then is the same as it is now. It's, the truth is that we have to rely on the county to let us know when it's safe to wear masks or not to wear masks. That's their job. And it's very important that we defer to their expertise. And I'm willing to do that. But it does require some advocacy from the mayor. Hey, wear a mask. Vicki and I have been doing live Facebook videos twice a week and more for weeks now. Man, we could certainly do that from City Hall with a mask on. Say, hey, look, I'm wearing a mask. You can too. It takes a lot of advocacy and education, but it's certainly something attainable.
Thank you so much, Mitch. Mitch, I'll come to you with this next one. At this campus and at campuses everywhere, mental health is a critical issue, and one that has touched our campus community. For a long time, this topic was seen as taboo. How do you plan on promoting an environment that normalizes mental health within the La Crosse community and within our college student community?
Man, it's tough. There's such a stigma, not only in relation to mental health, but seeking treatment for mental health. There's no question. This is something that's been brought home to me multiple times by Sarah Johnson at the YMCA, and just how difficult it is to bridge that gap and get people to get past the sense that they're going to be judged if they're getting treatment for their mental health issues. I've talked about my sister who a few years ago took her own life by overdosing on a prescription medication. She was suffering from depression and alcoholism, and she just would not get to the point where she was willing to go seek out that mental health counseling. And, that's the toughest part. And again, this really comes down to outreach and advocacy. I talked about Sarah Johnson, and she's an excellent resource for the YMCA and throughout our community. We have to rely on those resources, but also make sure that when we talk about normalization, if we have to do have a 5-minute talk about mental health at every city council meeting, I mean, we kind of have to do that for the betterment of our community.
Thank you, Mitch. Vicki, over to you.
We do have to reduce the stigma. I think every single one of us knows someone who is struggling with mental wellness. The other challenge that we have is there are just not enough counselors out there. Anyone trying to get in for mental health right now has a very long waiting list. I have a friend of mine from a former colleague who said they were 60 people deep on the list to get in for an appointment. So there is a shortage of psychologists, psychiatrists, and we need to be making sure no one is going to get help if we can't provide them with the resources for that help. So I think it's a conversation to have of how do we increase the resources available to those who are struggling, and how do we also raise awareness for those who are struggling. And obviously there's the ripple effect of that as well. COVID has done horrific things for many of us. I've seen it in my middle son, who's always happy-go-lucky. He's struggling right now as well. We have to be aware, we have to be talking about it, we have to be normalizing it, and we have to get them the resources that they need.
Thank you both for those responses. I have another question from the audience, and Vicki, I can come to you on this one. Certainly on our campus and in many other areas around the nation, the issues of policing, race, and public, those are top of mind.
Mm-hmm.
What types of training do you believe police need?
I think there's several ways that they need training, honestly. I think there is some sensitivity training. So I think there's cultural training. I know there is LGBTQ wants to do training with city employees as well. The more we can be understanding where people are and how they think, and not just see problems, but also see ways to celebrate differences, I think that is going to be key. We also need to be making sure that our police officers are engaging in ways that aren't just negative. I was really impressed with Chief Kudron when he came into as police chief. He approached me at the Chamber of Commerce and said, we don't want people to get tense the second a police officer walks in the door. So how do we start to have normal interactions with police officers so that it just changes that dynamic. So obviously keeping our officers current on what's happening, that pulse of our community, getting feedback is really critical.
Thanks so much, Vicky. Mitch, over to you about racial disparities within policing.
We talk about the type of training that police need. I mean, I think that the racial sensitivity training available through the YWCA is a key aspect of that. Getting an better understanding of restorative justice in our community is probably pretty essential. In relation to other training, I am not entirely clear what they do now, but I think those two issues I think would really help us in a big way. One of the key things to remember is that we all have different perspectives when it comes to policing. My experience with policing is different from yours, Anthony, or from any of the other number of people that I've talked to in relation to this issue. And first of all, we have to understand where people are in their relationship with policing and understand how we can create a better relationship between police and our community. And I'm willing to look at all levels of different types of training to make that happen.
Thank you so much, Mitch. I congratulate this audience member on their creativity. I love this question. If you received a $1 million grant to use for the city in any way you wanted, what would you do with it and why? So a blank check for $1 million, Mayor Reynolds or Mayor Markussen can do whatever they want with it. Vicky, over to you. What would you do?
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to give the really boring answer, but it's the fiscally correct answer, which is I would pay down some of our debt. So obviously we have a ton of our money that goes to paying debt. And as many of you can imagine, so think about your student loans. If you could pay down some of your student loans and then the freeing up that does to create some more creative ways to spend your money in more fun ways. Okay, so that's the boring answer. That is the boring answer. What I would do, honestly, right now, I would invest in the campaign that is about talent attraction. It's about branding our area. I see that having a huge ripple effect in terms of attracting people to the area and keeping people to our area. Right now, the tourism uses one brand and business uses another or doesn't even know how to brand our area. And the more we can attract people to this hidden gem that we have and make it a shining star, to me, that's going to solve a lot of our issues and really be promoting and enhancing the quality of life we have here.
Mitch, over to you on your $1 million.
Well, I would, this question, believe it or not, Anthony, has actually come up before. So it is not as unusual as you think it is. I would not pay off debt. We amortize the infrastructure improvements over the life of the infrastructure so that people in the future are paying for the improvements that we're making now. We pay off the same amount of debt that we acquire every year. It's a good process, and I would continue that process. What I would like to do is first day on the job, if I have to go get my tile trowel and go do it myself, I want to build showers for the female firefighters in our fire department. I want to restore the hours for the library, frankly, and bring back the furloughed workers with that grant. And I would really like to, in addition, if I could spend the next year, another year, maybe 2 years, without having fares on our transit system for those who are most challenged and vulnerable in our community. I would love to do that. So those three things that's what I do with $1 million.
Thank you so much, Mitch. We'll hope that $1 million check shows up sometime if either of you are mayor. Our next audience question, certainly a serious problem that our community faces. We've talked about some of the major challenges, and one of them is drugs, substance use and substance abuse. Mitch, where do you see La Crosse right now in terms of substance use and abuse, the seriousness of the problem, and what you might do to address it?
Well, we've seen a spike, Anthony, in this over certainly over this pandemic, not only in our community, but others as well. We have had a tremendous uptick in drug abuse for certain drugs. They tend to go in waves. That's the interesting thing, is that you'll have a drug that spikes and then falls out of favor, and another one spikes at another time. And then obviously we've had struggled through the issue with prescription painkillers and all of that. I mean, these are significant problems. And one of the things that I would like to do is to make sure that we're supporting, again, this goes back to removing stigma, supporting and advocating for those to go seek out drug treatment and drug counseling and to deal with addictions. We have to start removing stigma from those who actually try to go seek help and facilitate means for them to do that. And if that means, we have the Cooley Recovery Center, which it's not a drug addiction treatment place, but it is deals with addiction. If we can facilitate ways to make certain that places like that have a place in the city, I would love to be able to do that as mayor of La Crosse.
Thank you so much, Mitch. Vicky, over to you.
It certainly is a topic. Every time I would go out to Washington, D.C. advocating for local issues, the opioid was a common conversation of how we get the proper treatment for those who need it. And that's a struggle in our community is we don't have a detox area. People have to go to other communities for that service. It is you can't ignore that it is sometimes intertwined with mental illness, and both of those services just don't have that strong base of resources that we need here locally. It is a growing concern. It is again intertwined with police calls and trying to make sure people get the resources they need before we start getting into jailing and other situations that add complexity for individuals is really key. And I know that those resources are being developed as we speak.
Thank you so much, Vicky. On the topic of challenges that our community is facing, I'm curious if I were to have you in class as a guest speaker and I were to ask you to describe to the class what you view as the most serious challenges currently facing La Crosse, the things that are top of mind, the things that are top priorities for a Mayor Markussen or a Mayor Reynolds. What would you tell to my class if I were to pose that question to you? Vicky, I can start with you.
Sure. Honestly, the most pressing, because it is right now, here and now, it's getting our economy back up and running. And, that's intertwined with so much. So the pandemic, obviously, it caused people to lose their jobs. It has put our small businesses in debt. Aside from that, it has also made our homelessness problem that much more visible, and it has put some individuals in financial concern because our eviction moratorium will be ending. So getting our economy back up and running, getting people back in jobs, getting the services that shut down for our homeless because of the pandemic and concerns about spread, getting that back up and running. We have to plan for getting our tourism coming back here. This is all intertwined. When we have a healthy business community, when the pandemic is done and people can congregate again, that is key to ensuring people are getting services, people have income coming in, and that they can pay their bills so that we don't face another wave of individuals facing homelessness.
Thanks so much, Vicky. Mitch, over to you. If you were talking to a class at UWL and describing what you view as the most serious and pressing challenges facing La Crosse.
Yeah, just like in every recession, I mean, those who face the biggest socioeconomic challenges suffer the most. And addressing the needs of those who, half of our city are renters. Like 14% of our entire population lives in poverty, and those percentages increase dramatically in our BIPOC communities. I mean, we have some real struggles among communities that are the most marginalized and most vulnerable. And addressing the needs of those communities are pretty essential. Fortunately, we do have some federal stimulus money that's coming into not only the city of La Crosse, but also for some rental assistance and homelessness assistance, and getting that money as quickly as possible to those who need it to help with rental payments and to help address homelessness, but also to address some very just real needs of being able to feed people. We have so many people going to food pantries just to feed their families every week. We have 50% of our children getting free and reduced lunch. We have to address some really, really real needs for the people who live in our neighborhoods who are struggling every day.
Thank you so much, Mitch. I think if you were to also be talking to a class of UWL students. You frankly might hear some cynicism about politics today. Some people who are sick and tired of what they view as partisan bickering and things not seeming to get done, problems that seem to fester and never get resolved. It's something that I spend a lot of my time and energy, and my colleagues do, battling back against the cynicism towards politics. But what might you tell students who are just cynical about politics and think that, you know, government's broken, government can't do anything for me? And Mitch, I can start with you here.
All right, I really appreciate that question, because I think the question of partisanship has come up in this race to an extent that I've never seen before, frankly. And a lot of it has to do with some of the support that my opponent and I have received from separate parties. Now, I sought out the endorsement of La Crosse County Democratic Party, and they gave me that endorsement. My opponent apparently did not seek the Republican Party endorsement, and they gave her support. I don't think it was official. And so there is a little bit of a partisan feeling in this race. There's no question. And I think when I think of those types of things, and I'm gonna just address that, I believe, like I've said multiple times, that these are, of course, our neighbors and our friends who are gathering together to raise a collective voice, to talk in unison and talk about who they'd like to select as the next mayor. I think we can get past that concept of partisanship and talk about how we can collectively solve problems in our community and recognize that the people that are supporting our candidates are the same people who want to solve the problems in our community. This is a little bit different than on the national level and the state level. These are our friends, our neighbors, and our family members.
Thanks so much, Mitch. Vicky, over to you, how you might respond to students who say, you know, politics is broken, I'm cynical about politics, you know, government doesn't work. What might you say to them?
I certainly understand it. It's honestly, the reason I ran for mayor is because it is nonpartisan, and it is an opportunity. As I looked at my base of supporters, and I'm so proud to say this as often as I can, I am so proud of the group that I have assembled. I have Korean, I have LGBTQ, I have an 18-year-old, I have a retiree, I have business owners, I have employees, the full gamut. And as I approached this and endorsements, I said, I don't want to create divide. I want my team to remain proud of us doing what's best for La Crosse. But I will tell you, this community has a really hard time with nonpartisan races. I can't tell you how many people will say, I'm not going to vote for you unless you tell me if you're a Democrat or Republican. So here's my hope for the students. Participate, but do it your way. Ignore the D's, the R's, listen to those values and form a new conversation, right? Don't look at partisanship, look at values and start driving that conversation, because someone has to change it. Because I truly believe that we should be nonpartisan in La Crosse and be pro La Crosse together.
Thanks so much, Vicky. I've got another audience question, and I guess you can take this however you'd like. I can start with Vicky on this one. I think the questioner believes that there's a good old boy network in La Crosse. How will you avoid becoming part of the good old boy network that has created and is content with the way things are now?
What I will tell you is I've encountered the good old boy network. And some of it is just by nature, right? So Builders Association, you can imagine how many men are there, but they taught me everything I know. So I look at it and it's time to break some changes, to be perfect, or to break the standard quo. 165 years and we have never had a female mayor. Now it's time. So, and I say this not because, and I always qualify this to say I am extremely qualified. I happen to be a woman, but it exists. But I will also tell you, I have had the most incredible men that have taught me what I know. And I will tell you, the community also, when I created LeaderCast Women for this area, there were amazing men who said, absolutely, let us support it. We need to be promoting more women. And obviously that ripples into, I would love to see more people of color as well, leading some of our businesses and in our community.
Thanks so much, Vicky. Mitch, over to you on that good old boy network.
I mean, it's real. And the many years that I spent as a journalist here, watching how, we cynically call them backdoor deals or backroom deals or something like that. They're not quite that for everyone, but there certainly is a sense that some have higher priority than others in City Hall. The supporters that I have right now aren't looking at me as a good old boy person. There's no question. And, you can look at the donors who are donating to my campaign, where we're averaging less than $40 per donation, other than my mother-in-law, who is my biggest donor. But other than that, I mean, I think that the people that are supporting me in this community realize that I'm focused on not the developers and the real estate tycoons that are in our community and those in our business community. I'm focused on the people that our needs are the greatest, the marginalized and the vulnerable. The developers and business folks, the good old boys, they don't really like me much.
Thank you, Mitch. I'm going to come back to you on a somewhat related question from our audience. What will you do to improve race relations and eradicate institutionalized racism in the city?
Boy, eradication is going to take some time. There's no question. I've had calls to action by many supporters, and they're frustrated and they're impatient, and they've heard incremental steps too many times, and it begins to be galling to them. And I completely understand. I mean, we have made some incremental steps, and a part of them is understanding that we have had and continue to have a racism problem. One of the things that I've talked about is making sure that we're addressing housing discrimination. We have to do that. There is no question that it exists in our community, and that is no question that it focuses on our BIPOC communities. And we cannot allow that to happen. There has got to be an enforcement method for us to address housing discrimination. That's key for me. There's other methods and a lot of other ways that we can do that. Among them is empowering diverse voices to be part of our government and to be on our government committees and our boards, and to have a stronger presence in our community. And as mayor, I'm committed to doing that.
Thank you so much, Mitch. Vicky, over to you on race relations and institutionalized racism in La Crosse.
I did work on this when I was with the Chamber of Commerce. I made sure that we were very supportive of the Diversity Council and their efforts to, in that capacity, because that's what it was to work on making sure that we're getting more people of ethnicity, BIPOC, if you will, into our businesses. And so that was a really key group that I had worked with. I had really insightful feedback from a person in the Hmong community. And the comment was, we've coexisted, if you will, 30 plus years, and yet we have not found a way to peaceably move forward together. There's still this separation. And I believe that the mayor's office is that opportunity to continue conversations, to have an open door, to ensure that we understand the many voices that we have, and to be celebrating. So of course we have to work on the differences, but we have to grow a level of trust. And we need to be celebrating the incredible thriving nature and the diversity that we are gaining in our community, and be doing that much closer together.
Thank you so much, Vicky. Vicky, I can come back to you for this next one. An audience question asking, what does a first 100 days of a Mayor Markussen administration look like?
Yeah, I put this out there. Thanks for throwing me an easy one. So I have it on my website, the first 100 days. The first thing is we have half of the city council changing over. The mayor needs to get oriented. The city council members get oriented. And this sounds boring, but it's really important, right? You have to develop your team. So we need to get the department heads together, make sure we all understand how we're going to operate moving forward, developing that team. Then really critical, you've heard me talk about what's one of the pressing things for our community. It's our people. I want to gather our organizations that work closely with our people, our nonprofits, and to say, what is the pulse? What are the needs? What's coming up? We're coming out of the pandemic. You heard me talk about the eviction moratorium. how do we make sure that we are catching and supporting people and that we're doing it in a safe way? I want to be convening people to say, what do the next steps look like that the city needs to be made aware of?
Thank you so much, Vicky. Mitch, tell us about the first 100 days of Mayor Reynolds' administration.
Well, I don't have 100 days plan. I've always kind of thought those were kind of foolish. But I guess that's my cynicism showing through, because I don't think you fully understand what you're getting into until you get there. I think that, among the challenges that the next mayor is going to face from day one is to make sure that you're building a team with the department heads and understanding that we need to follow through on policies to help the people first in the city of La Crosse, that we need to restore and build up our neighborhoods within the city of La Crosse, that we need to be all following that direction for the better health of the city of La Crosse. And I think that that's the key thing that I'm going to be doing. We face some severe challenges with the PFAS contamination in the town of Campbell and for the city of La Crosse residents who live on French Island. We're going to have to address that absolutely immediately, and that's going to consume much of what the mayor does for the first 100 days. But there's going to be some pitfalls, and there's going to be some failures. But through failure, we grow, and I plan on growing quite a bit.
Thanks so much, Mitch. Mitch, I'll come back to you. We got a fun question from our audience. Mitch.
Wait, you said this before, so I don't know. I mean, is it really fun, or is it just, okay, go ahead.
Oh, I'll let you be the judge if this is a fun question, Mitch. The question is, what do you love most about UW La Crosse?
Oh man, okay. So I'm a multi-college dropout. I own that proudly. I have a sweatshirt from every college I dropped out of. And so I actually have a sweatshirt from UWL because I actually did drop out of UWL once for about a semester, and then I came back. But my favorite thing was really the relationships that I built with instructors that were there. And it's such a tight knit and very personal environment, and it was amazing. And at a very difficult point in my life, I was able to finally get my college degree. And it really launched me forward in a way that I wasn't expecting, frankly. But I cherish the relationships that I built with instructors that were there at that time, some of whom are still there, believe it or not. And I think that I like to believe that the students there, and this is what I've heard, the students there are building those same relationships. And that's the kind of thing that really propels you forward in life and helps you build forward not only your professional life, but also your personal life. And so I guess that would be my favorite thing.
Thanks so much, Mitch. Vicky, what about you? Your favorite stuff about UW La Crosse?
Honestly, it's the vibrancy. Without UW La Crosse, we're just less vibrant. Everyone in this community feels it when the students come back. They feel it when they leave. And I will tell you, we don't live too far south of campus. And we drive through campus on a nice day just to laugh at the students who are outside having fun. And yes, there's some reminiscing that goes on there. I will admit to go, I remember those days. But not just that, not just the students on the campus, but it is so enjoyable to go to Howie's and to talk to the waiter or waitress and get to know them a little bit better and what they're studying and to have internships. You've heard me talk about this. Again, interns have brought as much joy to teams that I have worked on as honestly, I pride myself on where some of the interns have gone and to see them grow into their careers and take a little bit of pride in that. So again, and beyond the students, to have the access that we have to the professors and the staff is just an incredible resource for our community. So I value that. Vibrancy is the best way to put it.
Thank you so much, Vicky. Well, our time is short, so I want to wrap up. Vicky, give you a minute to offer any concluding remarks you have for the UWL students, the UWL community as a whole.
Yes, thank you. I have truly enjoyed my connections with the university, as you can probably tell me just in the last vibrancy comment. I have cherished, as I said, sitting on Chancellor Gao's advisory board and continuing those connections, working with the career services to say, how do we integrate students into our community that much stronger? I enjoy hearing from our businesses to say, wow, it's going to be great to have the students come back. And again, just to have a great connection to how well the university is tied in, and to see the potential for it to grow more. I have that experience. So as you heard me say, I have ties to the university and many of the departments, and the Alumni Center, Career Services, the Chancellor, and getting back to how do we make a difference in La Crosse? I come back to 165 years. It's time to have an experienced, qualified woman in as mayor, and let's see the potential of change.
Thank you, Vicky. Mitch, any final remarks for the UWL students and the UWL community?
Well, I just want to say that I appreciate again another opportunity for us to share our thoughts and our beliefs and our values with the student community and with everyone else who's watching. I really appreciate that. I mean, it's an honor to be able to serve as mayor of the city of La Crosse and serve the people of the city of La Crosse. And oftentimes I know that the students, the college students, 20,000 people strong, are often overlooked or dismissed as something we just have to put up with in part of our community. And I don't believe that's true. We're all people here and we all have needs, and we're all part of the same community. And I want to make sure that we're serving everyone in our community as well as possible. I believe in you. My son is a college student here in La Crosse. So I believe in what we're doing here, and I believe we can do something really good together. And I encourage you to engage as much as possible. I encourage you to reach out to me on my website, mitchreynolds.com. And above all, I encourage you to vote coming up on April 6th. Oh, for me, Mitch Reynolds for mayor. Thanks.
It's less than 2 weeks away. Students, I need you to go to myvote.wi.gov. That's myvote.wi.gov for information about voting in this election. And I need you to vote. I really, really need you to vote. So go to myvote.wi.gov and feel free to send any questions to your friendly neighborhood political scientist if you have any questions about voting or any questions about the upcoming election. But April 6th, put that in your calendar right now. Mitch and Vicky, thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to our campus community. And thanks so much to everyone for tuning in. Hope you have a wonderful night. And remember, April 6th.